her husband has been very distant from her in the relationship, and how can she bring him closer and to her once again, and to have him or make him love her again. Now, I'm waiting for my co-host. We're going to be doing this together, Goma, and so I hopefully that technology does not play an issue and get in the way, like it has been for the last few times we've done this. And again, if you hear my voice sound a bit horseish, a bit hoarse, then it is. I actually have a sore throat, and so you may find a bit rough than normal. So anyway, that's beside the point. I want to talk about this tonight, and hopefully my co-host Coma can join me, because what we're trying to do is every Monday at 6 p.m. to do these live and broadcast and to cover some questions that are coming in. And this one happened to be from a wife who feels distant from her husband. Now, I want to say these questions, we don't have the full context, meaning we don't have everything that's going on was not given to us. It's just basically a one-way street. The question comes in and we try the best to answer. So you're going to hear the answer be based upon our best experience in our work, myself and Goma, when she does join as a licensed marriage and family therapist, and for me, also a certified relationship coach, having worked with hundreds and hundreds of couples over the years. And we combined, in her work, in my work, I would say, oh my goodness, probably 30, 40 years of experience, thereabouts. Let me just say 30 years. I can't speak for her. And I know I'm almost 2 decades in this. And so we've had so many relationships that have basically, we can almost like say, kind of speculate what might have been going on in these relationships. So even though she did not give us the context and there's no name, so it's very, very anonymous, but we're going to speak about this in a way that you can be helped in your own personal relationship. Maybe some things that we'll say for now that I'll say until Goma joins me, maybe something you're experiencing in your relationship. So we're hoping that it's for that purpose, right? It's for you to be helped and not just to speak about what might be happening in this person's life. So let me just take a sip of water here. Oh, that felt good. So I want to begin by just saying that I hope this has okay, so I hope it is I just saw a notice that says reminder to start the live, but I think it's live. I want to make sure that it is live here in the group. Start live video. Okay, I guess it's live. Yeah. If you're watching this, let me know that why is it doing this? Let me know if you're seeing this video. If you're in the Facebook group or if you're on YouTube, I would love to hear whether or not you're seeing this or not. I don't know. It's keep on telling me that I need to go live, but it shows me as being live. Again, I apologize for that, but want to make sure that it's live. So yeah, it shows as being live. So at least on YouTube, I hope, and Facebook, if you're in the group, if you're hearing me, could you let me know, please? I'd really appreciate that. Whether or not, let me go in comments here to see if anybody commented on this. No one has commented. Okay, so I guess I'm pretending like we're live, so I hope it is. So let me just begin by saying that this wife feels distant in her relationship. Obviously, she desperately wants her husband to make her feel loved. Now, again, what I find is that sometimes in relationships, if I was to speak to this husband, maybe in his mind, he feels like he is loving his wife, but she doesn't feel loved. Now, obviously he should not be the one that determines what love is like for her, how she feel love, because we know about this love languages, and you have heard, I would imagine, about the five love languages, right? And those five love languages, just for a quick revision here, is, acts of service, it's affirmation, words of affirmation, it is physical touch, it is gifts, and it is quality time. Those are the commonly known five love languages that people have heard for so many years, and we have kind of accepted that to be the five different ways people feel loved. I know for me, it's words of affirmation. That's the best way to describe how I feel loved, or feel understood, or acknowledged, or cared for by my wife. So when I have, for example, gone out and on the weekend, like I did this past weekend, I went and I, cut the grass, and I weeded, and everything looks real nice, well manicured. So my wife would come home, which like she did, and she drove up, and one of the things she said, I won't say the first thing, but one of the things she said right about when she came inside the house was how good everything looked. And she said, honey, you did a bang up job. You did a great job. So what she did was give me words of affirmation, recognizing that I felt like I got heard. I was heard. And she basically communicated to me a language that I understood to be my love language, which is words of affirmation. And for her, her words of affirmation is physical touch. And so that's how she feel understood and felt loved. And so, as by the way, Goma has just joined me. Hi, Goma. How are you? I'm glad to see.
I'm good, Kingsley. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, I was mentioning that you would join me at some point, but I'll start it
Yes.
because
Yes. I was
um,
wrapping up there with a client, so
that's
forgive me.
fine. That's
Yes.
understood. That's understandable. So,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, I was just beginning to unpack this idea of this wife who wrote in
Mm-hmm.
and saying that she felt that she felt her husband felt they felt very distant in the relationship. She feeling very distant from her husband,
Okay.
and she said, how can I bring him closer to me and make him love me again? So
Mm-hmm.
I began to share how many times, the idea of love, how it's communicated, and how different people feel and experience love differently. And I was saying,
Mm-hmm.
for example, for me, is words of affirmation based upon the five love languages that's out there,
Mm-hmm.
commonly referred to as the way people describe how they feel loved. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, mine is words of affirmation. And so again, I tend to look for that. And when I hear that, especially from people who are, in this case, my wife, who is significant in my life, from
Yes.
her, it makes a big difference than when she does it than anybody else does it. So when I go on a speaking engagement, for example, and she's there, and what she says means a lot more to me than everybody else, even though I really um, cherish and I applaud and I show great gratitude for the people who share with me about my speaking. Again, I really want to hear from her. I think we lost your video there for a second. They'll come back in, but I'll keep on talking. So I find that it really helps whenever I experience that from my. There you go. Okay, so we all have different love languages, and
Yes.
so I was saying this wife, maybe the husband. I started by saying maybe the husband, he is in his way feel like if I was to speak to him, he would say, "What is she talking about?"
Mm.
Because sometimes husbands are we're the last one. Sometimes we're just so oblivious,
Very
uh, and it's true. It's truth. We're just so
true. Very true. Mm-hmm.
yeah of the relationship of what's
Yes.
happening,
Yes.
and I think the wives have their finger on the pulse and the heartbeat of the relationship more so than us. So maybe he doesn't even realize. So I think that I started by just saying that maybe it's a love language issue. I don't know. What's your thoughts so far? Because I've been speaking a while since since you have been here. So let's give it a chance to speak. I
It's
want to
like,
hear from
let me
you.
stop talking, Goma. You talk. So
Yes.
I hear that. So she feels like he's not connecting with her. Is that
Yeah.
what you said?
Yeah, she says she feels very distant. And he's very distant from her. That's how she feels, and
Okay.
she want to feel loved again by him.
Okay. Okay. Well, there's so many things that could be happening there, right? If you're
Right,
feeling distant,
right.
some of the questions that come to mind for me is what are you all been doing to connect,
Mm,
right? What have you? Yeah, have you all been doing dates? Have you all been checking in? You know, at the end of your day, um, have you all been sexually intimate?
Hmm.
Because that's a big thing for most
Yeah.
men. I'm not going to say for all men, but for
Right.
most men, right? So what have you all been doing to connect?
Hmm.
That's really where we have to start.
Yeah.
And if you're not connecting, when did it stop? What
Hmm.
happened before it stopped?
I read something today, which is interesting that you brought that up, because I read a wife was, I mean, this a group, and she was talking about how she'd been married for 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
and she said that when it comes to the relationship, the marriage is great
Okay.
except for the area of sexual intimacy, and she
Mm-hmm.
said it's been 15 years, and it's pretty much the way it has been is nothing that's been exciting all the 15 years, but she said the last 5 years has been worse, because really she would her husband would agree that they would connect sexually once a week. Then it became once a month, and it's now become like once every so often. And she said what has happened is she found out 5 years ago that he was into pornography,
Mm-hmm.
and so that kind of led him to feel where he doesn't really need the connection, but she feels so disconnected. So I think the point you're bringing up, that around sexual intimacy, if that may not be there, and again, we don't know the
Right.
full context, that could be a possibility of what is happening in the relationship, because that is can be a contributing factor as well, you know.
Yes, it could very well be, because the thing is, when we talk about sexual intimacy, people think that it's just the sex. It's
Right.
not the sex.
Right.
It's the emotional connection. It's the spiritual connection. It's all of those things that you all are able to bond around. So even as you go about your day to day, you have that between the two of you, right?
Mhm.
That soul tie, right,
Mhm.
between the two of you. That keeps and that keeps you going
I
for
agree.
some time. So if that's missing, that can also make people feel very disconnected.
Yeah.
It can feel like you're distant from each other.
Again, we just don't know, and I mentioned up front that we just don't. We have been doing this for so many years. We can pretty much speak to different aspects of these
Right.
relationships. So what we're doing is speaking just like from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I've seen sometimes, and I'm gonna speak from a man's perspective, right?
Yes,
Sometimes
correct.
if we feel rejected by our wives, and we have been initiating and
Mm-hmm.
rejection after rejection after rejection, it comes a
Mm-hmm.
time where we no longer are feeling even the urge and the need.
Yes,
And again, it's, as you described, it's so important for both people, especially for the guy.
yes.
And so if he feels that way, and again, we don't know here, but suppose that is what's been happening, and
Mm-hmm.
he gets to the point where, you know what, I'm no longer going to put myself in that position to be once
Mm-hmm.
again feel rejected by my wife. It
Mm-hmm.
could be where that disconnect is coming from, because he may feel like, you know what, my pride, my ego is getting crushed time and time again. I just
Mm-hmm.
can't do it anymore. And I find sometimes for men, that's the reason why they distance themselves. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
like a punishment, it's more of a protection for them
Mm-hmm.
on their part, you know?
It's true. Very good point you make. I have seen that as well. I've seen that
Mhm.
happen with
Mhm.
clients. That's a really, really good point. Now, I've also seen where, speaking of the pornography, once they get rejected so
Yeah.
often, then they turn to the
Yeah.
pornography. And then the challenge with pornography is that it fills that emotional void for
Yeah.
them to the point where they don't have the need
Right.
to turn back to the spouse,
Right.
right? And once that happens, it's because it's so addictive, it's very difficult.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. So here's what I think also with going, and I think you're right. I mean, and they get the emotional and physical need met by that computer and that screen they're looking at, right? So that
Yep.
happens where it no
Yep.
longer needs. I find sometimes I've heard
Yeah.
where a husband will say sometimes, and you can speak to this because as a woman, and they will say that how their wife is punishing them because they may have done something,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel like now their wife is punishing them by withholding sex from them, and their only thing is is they feel very hurt and rejected by that. And
Mm-hmm.
so it builds up where maybe, again, what I find, and I've seen in my own of my many years of marriage, at some there's before I kind of got grown up and more mature, right? But
Right.
my immaturity at times, where I would just feel like, okay, I'm gonna, like, it's like I grew up hearing this phrase, you cut your nose off to spite your face, right? So it
Mhm.
means like you're gonna, okay, forget it. I'm gonna just, since you're punishing me, I'm gonna just be like, take my toy and play
Yeah,
my game and, you know, retreat,
that's right.
temper tantrum type of thing. But I find
Mhm.
sometimes, do you find sometimes where women do legitimately use sex as a punishment? Because again, if we don't know in this case if it's not what she may have done at one point,
Correct.
and it led him to this place where he's at.
Mhm. Yes, some women do because because this comes down to messaging, Kingsley,
Hmm.
right? S- This is why I always struggle when people give young women a message that sex is everything in the
Yeah.
relationship. Because then what happens is they think that, well, if I don't have sex, then he's going to do what I want.
Hmm.
What happens is it becomes a manipulative tool.
Yeah.
And when people will only allow themselves to be manipulated for so long, after a while, they're going to put a stop to that,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So we have to be really, really careful with that. But yes, I have seen it where people will say, if you want to get XYZ, withhold the sex.
Right. Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
truly doesn't work. When I do premarital counseling, one of the things I always say is nothing should interfere with how you love on each other. You
Right.
can still love on each other intimately and still address issues.
Right. Right.
Because I think that's where we have the conflict. A lot of younger women may feel, or even men may feel like, if I give in sexually, then
Hmm.
he's not going to take me seriously when
Right.
I talk about the things that are important to me.
Right.
But the truth is, one thing has nothing to do with the other,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? And I think so. The messaging really, it really matters.
100%. I think both can exist exclusively, right? So one, like I said, that both things can be true. You can still be interacting in an intimate manner, but it doesn't mean you don't address the issue
Right.
and work through those things. So again,
Mhm.
going back to this wife, maybe what she is feeling now at this point, again, I would recommend and suggest to her, well, let's look in the very beginning. Is there an area you could say you're responsible for in this? Because it could be like, again, we're describing which that she may have a part to play where he's at a point right now where he either, you know, feels like, again, I've been hurt so often, feel rejected by her, so I'm going to act in a way to protect myself. And
Mhm.
so maybe if she says, how can I make him love me again? I would say then probably, okay, well, how have you been loving him? How have you been loving him? And that doesn't mean that, you know, she is a cause of it. But again, we want to make sure we don't, first, we, as the Bible would say, search me, O God, and see if there's any wicked ways in me, any way out of bent. See if there's, so I got to start with myself. Search me and show
Mhm.
me what it is I might be responsible for. And before I even begin to take out the beam that's in my brother's eyes, when I
Mhm.
have, you know, I'm sorry, they take out I
The
said wrong.
log, the log.
The
Mhm.
log, right? Yeah. I have a log in my eyes. I'm gonna take out a little chip into my brother's eyes, you know. And so
Yeah.
sometimes we have to first start there. And so I'm wondering if she begin, how can she make her husband love her again? I'm wondering and feel closer. What can she do and have she done in this aspect of closing the gap?
Mhm. Yeah, and the thing is, she's talking about distance, right? So when you start to feel distance again, you have to really go back to dating.
Mm, mhm,
Go back to where you started.
mhm,
That really is key
mhm.
because I think a lot of times people really it can happen to all of us very easily, where we get caught up in the day to day, all the things that we have to do, the runnings, and then we're exhausted. And we know for women, the whole thing with sexual intimacy for women, or even connecting, bonding with women, is that they really need to be relaxed,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So if you're just busy and you're running and you're engaging and you're getting to the kids, I don't know if they have kids. That's
Right.
not talked about,
Right.
because those are all things to factor in. You know, do you have children? How
Mhm,
much time are you giving yourself for self-care? All of these things. But I would just say, go back to dating. Sit with your husband
mhm.
and say, you know, I'm feeling, and again, she could be feeling this way. He may not be feeling that way.
Right. Right.
So
Mm.
say I'm feeling pretty lonely, because that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
It's not about the distance. What I'm hearing is she's feeling lonely.
That's the end of yes.
Okay. So when somebody say, well, there's distance between us and it seems that we're not connecting, what you're saying is I am feeling lonely. So
Mm.
identify your feelings and go to your husband with that. And say, I'm feeling pretty
Mm.
lonely in the relationship. How about we go on a date?
Mm.
Start there.
Mm. And I think that's really speaks to what we had talked about earlier about what is it I can do, right? Because sometimes we look at many times what can they do, but what can I
Mhm.
do,
Yeah.
And so I think I agree with you. She could initiate that and begin. And I think you're right, 100%. Where it's not so much the distancing is just where the manifestation of something deeper. It's how she's feeling, like you said, probably lonely.
Hmm.
And if she could start with that,
Hmm.
and probably also, I'm thinking, suppose she even enter a conversation and become curious as to what it is that maybe he may feel like, she doesn't even notice some things is happening in his world, maybe the
Hmm.
stress and the, financial stress or work stress
Hmm.
or whatever it is that's going
Hmm.
on. If she became curious and possibly even lean in and
Hmm.
ask him, and again, we don't know, but we just want, based upon our experiences, she could ask him some questions. Honey, I noticed that you have been whatever she has seen, and speak about the facts, not something you make up. So, I noticed that sometimes you are just in your mind. I wonder where your mind is, because you seem, and I look at your face, it just seemed like you're not present with me, and I was wondering what's going on there.
Hmm.
And just being curious and see, because he may feel like at least she shows some interest in him, actually cares, and he may
Hmm.
see it as, I was like, he may not say this, but I was waiting for you to ask me about me and
Hmm.
check in on me, and because I feel like I'm always giving, because many husbands feel this way. I've been giving, and I've been, you know wanted to ask to give more, but what about me? What about me?
Hmm. It's true. I mean, I had a husband once who, you know, granted he could afford it, but he was buying all these things and doing all these things and doing, and he just got, actually they were engaged. They were not married yet.
Mm,
He got to the place where he said, "Yeah, I know she can't afford to give me what I gave her, but even a card would be nice, right?"
mm, mm.
So you have a point.
Yeah,
Maybe, and again, we don't know the full context of
right.
everything that they're going through, but maybe he's been doing a lot and he's just pulling back,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Because actually, I have heard. I mean, I remember this one guy. He said, "All I'm there for is like I'm the bank. I am the person who would just seen for this one thing." And I feel like, outside of that, it's almost like I'm non-existent.
Mhm.
Like I'm not seen. I'm
Mhm.
only seeing when it's time for me to bring something to the table and
Right.
fix something or this.
Yeah.
Other than that, and he said, I just feel like I'm just being used for those things. I'm not
Yeah.
seen for who I am. And
Mhm.
sometimes in a relationship, a husband can feel that way
Yes.
because, and maybe the wife doesn't even realize that she is possibly leading him to feel that way because she had not recently acknowledged and shown appreciation and gratitude for the work he does. I know it can go the other way as well. But
Mhm.
I'm speaking from the man's standpoint. Sometimes we
Right.
feel, men have told me many times that they don't feel, because men have feelings too, regardless of what is out there. Men do have
Mhm.
feelings too, and we just feel sometimes like, I would love for at least to be acknowledged and being told, and we love to have our egos scratched too.
Of course, of course, that's right. I mean, look, relationships require intentional work, right? I know we hear the word intentional a lot, but the truth is we have to be intentional. We have to be mindful, right? Of how we allow time to go by between the two of us. Right? I come home today, it's like two ships passing.
Yeah,
You're going this way, I'm going that way, and we keep doing this and we keep doing this. At some point, we're not going to turn toward each other. And that turning toward is so important. It's so important.
but
So
yeah,
if he's doing everything and he feels like, well, she's not noticing, as you were saying, then at some point he's going to stop. Or if she's doing everything, and sometimes what it could be is, it could be where she was doing things before and she pulled back, and then he now decided to try, and then he pulls back. So, it gets very tricky.
I think that's really it's amazing you said that, because I find sometimes it's like people are keeping score. Well, I did this and you did that, and I didn't do this, and
Mhm,
so they keeping this score continuous of
mhm,
the relationship. And
mhm,
unfortunately, what happened is that so someone said, "Oh, this is an interesting topic." Yeah, it is, because it
mhm.
happens so often. Facebook user said this is an interesting topic, because what happened is
Right.
that we see it so often in and people we work with, that we can tell
Mhm,
you it's almost like a universal thing sometimes.
mhm.
And I find that, maybe again, like we said here, that this husband is feeling some ways about what's happening, and I think you used the word the last time, he may be protesting
Yes.
the relationship, not
Mhm.
because he has anything against her, but he's like saying, "Wait a minute, we just can't keep on going this way. Something has to give,"
Right. Right. That's correct.
Yeah,
And that's it. And that is his way of protesting.
yeah,
If what she's presenting to us is what happening, if he's distancing himself, that's a way of protesting.
yeah,
Some protests are loud and some protests are quiet and
yeah,
silent.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the volume on what he's doing now maybe is just finally getting her attention, and maybe he might be saying, I've been trying to tell you for such a long time,
Mm-hmm.
that, but you haven't really been listening to me. I've been trying to tell
Mm-hmm.
you about what we could do differently, or what my needs are, whatever the case might be, and she may not have listened. Now he's simply saying, well, I don't know what else to do, but if I just distance myself,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully. And it could be his way of also communicating a displeasure about something, obviously, that he hopes she can now get the message and
That's
come
correct.
and probably approach him and talk about the matter that they have been, he's been hoping that would at least be addressed at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it could be his way of communicating to her, honey, I'm starving over here, I'm dying over here, and can you notice me, can you recognize this, and can you even rescue me from drowning.
Mm-hmm.
you know
That's right. That's exactly right.
yeah.
I would be really curious. I wish she had shared a little bit more, because I would be really curious to see, you know, what their day-to-day activity
Mm-hmm.
um is like,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What do they do, or really activities more
Mm-hmm.
so? What do they do as a couple other than just as a family? What do they do as a couple?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
what are their ways of connecting?
Yeah,
Because she's saying, there's no connection, but what are the ways of connecting?
I think that's a great idea to even, as you described earlier, you started saying, Goma, because I think it's such a good idea, because sometimes people are trying to figure out how do we connect in our relationship. And I think you started by saying one of those ways is to go on regular dates, right?
Mhm,
I was just speaking to someone recently who said, we have not had a date, um, ourselves, him and his wife, in
mhm,
3 years. In three
mhm,
years, they've not had a date. And the person
mhm,
said they're just recently is going to start, they've been trying to see how they can make it happen. And I'm
mhm.
thinking, that's a very long time. How are they nurturing the relationship? What is that looking like? So dating is one thing that it can do. I think it's sometimes even set aside some time just to talk over their day.
Yes, it is important. It really is important. I mean, someone's asking a question here. Maybe we should look into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna put it here.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, my husband and I have communication issues. We have been married for over 10 years, and it's just all about sex, but not interested in how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
He has outbursts when he's angry, and I'm just frustrated when he doesn't listen. I
Mm-hmm.
usually walk away and don't
Uh-huh.
talk about what went wrong or right. How can I relate? Cause this has put strain on our relationship and communication. Hmm.
Okay. Husband and I have communication issues. We've been married for 10 years, over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all about sex, but not interested in how I feel. All right.
He has outbursts when he's angry, and I'm just frustrated when he doesn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can pick up on this here, when if I can just add a part here, when you said that he doesn't listen, I wonder what does it really mean? As he doesn't listen to your request, he doesn't listen about what. I usually walk away, and I don't talk about what went wrong or right. So he won't even know that something went down for her because she said, I don't even talk about what went not what was wrong or right. So the question becomes, how would he know that there's something that bothered her to the point where in her mind it was a right or wrong behavior, because she categorized those two things as one is it right or wrong. So if she's feeling that way, he would never even know. And the
Mhm.
question is, how can he correct a behavior, in my mind,
Mhm.
if he doesn't know what the behavior is that's causing her to feel the way she felt when she walked away from there and didn't say anything?
Mhm. That's a good point you're making. And as I'm reading this here, so what's coming up for me, is when she says, I usually walk away and don't talk about what went wrong or right. Um, what went wrong or right? How can I relate? Because this has post strain. So if I were, if she came to me for counseling, what I would say to her is, because the way she is explaining the sexual part, it seems like she's burdened by it,
Hmm.
right? And as we were talking earlier about how when men feel as if women don't want to be sexually intimate with them, their wives, if they feel that they're a burden to their wives because they want to be sexually intimate and the women are rejecting them constantly, they may sometimes shut down. So we're trying not to have that take place here.
Hmm.
So what I would say is, when go to your husband, and when you go to him, you want to first start by talking about how it is important for you to also be sexually intimate with him.
Hmm.
That if that's important to you, you want that to continue. At the same time, you feel like there's a part of you that is struggling, and that's the part of you that wants to be heard and seen by him, right? So I really enjoy when we're sexually intimate. It brings me joy. I have a good time. I also am struggling because I want to be heard and seen by you.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's missing for me.
Hmm.
That's missing for me. I'm wondering how we could work on that aspect of our relationship.
Mm. Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know what? I
Because
think, I'm sorry, go
mhm,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, because what we don't want to happen is for this to become a me against you situation. You want sex, or that's all you want, right? That's all you want. That's all you care about. It's what you want, and all you want is sex. Um, and if we're in a marriage, that means the both of us should want to be intimate with each other
Hmm.
sexually, and every other way, because there are many other ways to be intimate. Um, so I really want to stress to her that it's important when you go to talk to him to emphasize that yes, you want that also,
Yes.
and you want to be heard and seen
Right.
in addition to that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where I think that's a very good point you're making, because maybe he all he hears is this one thing that all he wants, and he only hears that, but he never hears anything else. But what I want to just say also too was, they've been married for over 10 years. So I want to celebrate you for the fact that you've done 10 years. Many couples don't do even, 10 years. So you have done what many couples have not done. So there's got to be something more that really keeps this relationship going, because you've been there for 10 years. And I wonder if your husband ever hear about anything else. I'm not saying, which is not a finger pointing here. We're just kind of bringing up things, and hopefully you can extract from here some things that are helpful, because we're not doing counseling here either. So we just start speaking in,
Mhm,
in general terms. But I find sometimes,
mhm,
husbands may not feel like uh, that what is being pointed out are other things that they may have been doing that they feel like they never get recognition for. And if
mhm,
they only hear about what they do wrong or don't do, but never hear about the things that they do right and have done, they can also become a very a point of anger for that, feel angry about, where here it is, I'm always hearing this complaint about this one thing, but I never hear about what I've done that may be positive. are quote good things, right? So
Mhm.
maybe, and again, we just don't know, the feeling may be coming from him lacking any other comment or compliment from
Mhm.
this relationship.
Okay, she said, yes, sis, I feel I'm just a sex person, but nothing else. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but he doesn't communicate what he feels. So, yes, so again, I would go to him and say, I enjoy our sexual relationship. That's really important to me, and I enjoy that. I also feel like something is missing for me. And what's missing for me is for us to have other kinds of intimacy in the relationship, like communication intimacy, right? Like, there are different kinds of spiritual intimacy,
Mhm.
entertainment intimacy, maybe going out together. There's so many ways to be intimate.
Mhm.
So go to him and say, I like this other way that we're intimate, which is the sexual intimacy. And I also want us to try some of the other ways of being intimate. Talking, right? Pillow talk.
Mhm.
Let's have more of that.
Mhm.
Let's go for a walk and talk sometimes. Walking and talking is very helpful because even if you say he has anger outbursts, even for somebody who may be angry when they're walking, they're regulating their emotions.
Right.
So you can walk and talk, and he may not be angry, and you all can have some good bonding time.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the approach you just mentioned, Goma. I think this is a very important thing you mentioned about. Um, I think I heard in there is how she talk about the sex, right? Because you can still, like you said earlier, when we are trying to answer the question about this other wife, about both two things can be true at the same time, right? You can still deal with the issue, but also still enjoy have sexual intimacy. I wonder, like you said, the approach could be where, if she was to communicate to him about the fact that he is attentive to her sexually and seeing her as the only person he wants to share this very special moment with, and he really kind of give him the sense of like is doing something that as some wives would wish their husband would do, be into them and still find them sexually attractive, because some husbands no longer find their wives sexually attractive to be even sexually involved with them. The very fact that he is really a compliment to the fact that he sees her as a person he wants to share that moment with. And if she was to possibly could, talk about the idea, like you just said, about, how she appreciates and show gratitude that he sees her and still finds her sexually attractive to be engaged with her. At the same time, here was what she would share her preference. What I would also like the fact, just as how you show that eagerness and that, act, it would help me to know, like you described earlier so well, that here's some other areas I would really appreciate that you show similar attention to. So he doesn't hear it as a criticism or a complaint. He hears as a compliment and something that she finds attracted by, that he's into her that way. But then I think she can now deliver her request in a manner where he might be more open to hear that. I'm just thinking of what might be helpful here.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And I think, maybe also learning how to even communicate, because sometimes too it's how we're communicating these
Yeah.
things, right? I don't know what her communication style is, and whether it's all confrontational or whether it is more, of speaking from a place of self,
Mhm.
right? Speaking from my own emotional needs, because that is how we're supposed to be communicating in a relationship. What are my emotional needs, and how can I share them with you so that you can help me to meet them?
Yeah.
Is she coming from that place? So that's something for you to also think about, sis, as you're writing here. Am I expressing my needs
Mhm.
to him so that he can meet my needs?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are your needs? You're saying you want better communication,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So coming from a place of self, come from there. What do I need? I want to bond with you in
Mhm.
more ways than just us having sex. I want to bond with you in other ways. And here are
Mhm.
some of the other ways that we can bond and become even stronger together,
Yeah.
right? And then share those things with him.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think it's you're onto something, because I think when I reread her first thing was she said she usually walks away and don't
Hmm.
talk about what went wrong or right. So you're spot on that he may not even know what her needs are. What would she needs from him
Hmm.
outside of that? how can she communicate, number one, know what she
Mhm.
needs, and then communicate that to him in a way
Mhm.
he can hear her. But I think if you start with a that whole sandwich idea, a
Mhm.
praise, and then you deliver the message, and then a praise at the end, then he could probably more
Mhm.
open to hear that than possibly the way it's been delivered right now.
Yeah, correct. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, from what I'm reading here, it doesn't seem like the only concern she has here is his communication and some anger. She's saying
Yeah.
that he gets angry.
Mhm.
When he's angry, he has outbursts,
Right.
and then she gets frustrated when he
Right.
doesn't listen, right?
Right.
So I would just really focus on, again, making sure, hopefully there's no abuse there.
Right.
And I would just focus on really how we can talk to each other in a way that we can both hear each other.
Mm. That's great. That's great. So again, like we want to mention this, even though we are therapists, we are licensed marriage and family therapists. This is not, we're not offering you counseling here. We're just making some suggestion as to what can be helpful for in general for every person who's listening, that they can
Mhm.
actually hear something they can do in their relationship. And
Right.
we covered a great ground, a lot of grounds today,
Yes.
in our time. And so again, we want to say, we're kind of winding down here, but hopefully
Mhm.
these were helpful ideas, helpful general suggestion, because we just don't know the context totally. And again, we're because the person who is here was putting the question, we're speaking to that person. Doesn't mean if the husband was here, we would not speak to him also about what is described as his anger and his outburst. We're not dismissing that. That's also needs to be addressed too. But because he's not here, we're speaking to that wife, and hopefully that's being heard from that spirit of just trying to help in that regard. So, any
Mhm.
final words before we wrap things up here, Goma?
No, I think both scenarios were, it's interesting because we had two different scenarios.
Yeah,
One of them, the wife is saying he doesn't want to bond, he doesn't want to connect. And this one, she's saying all he wants is sex
yeah.
and not really talk, to her. He's not really talking to her.
Mhm.
So I would just really say to both of you, come from a place of self again. Right? Come from a place of self. What do I need? And how can I share that with my partner so that my partner can help me meet that need? That should be the goal.
Yeah.
So focus on your needs and communicate your needs.
Mm.
Mhm.
So okay, the person's, I just want to read what she said. The fact that sometimes it can be confrontational, but listening to us, she said, I'm sure to make a difference in how she approached the marriage. So thank you for sharing
Oh,
that.
nice.
Yeah, that's
Good.
really good to hear that. And
That's very good.
yeah, we applaud that, and we praying that, yeah,
Yes, that's right.
yeah, thank you for actually saying that. And we
Mhm.
that tells me, yeah, your approach and your spirit about even sharing your question was really helpful for everyone. So thank you for doing that, but also that you're very teachable and open to change.
Yeah.
And I think God would honor that. So thank you
Yes.
for
Amen.
for that as well. So
Amen. Yes, that you came from a place of really wanting to
yes,
to help your relationship, not to just criticize your spouse. So that's
exactly.
beautiful.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we applaud that. Yeah. So again, we're gonna be here again on Mondays at 6 p.m. and
Yep.
we're gonna try to mostly one question we can get to, or maybe two questions like we did tonight, but at least it's more than enough. We cover a wide variety
Oh
of
yeah.
topics, and we look forward to being here again next week. And at the same time, 6 p.m. on the Monday. And
Yeah.
we'll have our live broadcast here. So with that said, God bless you as you and thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. And again, don't feel free to add comments, and we love to
Hmm.
hear from you, like we mentioned today, and we'll have everyone see
Hmm.
what we're talking about, so we can have a ongoing conversation.
Hmm. This was beautiful. I love it. Thank you for being so vulnerable with us, really, and
Yeah,
engaging and keeping
exactly.
the conversation going. Yeah.
100%. So until then, until next week, God bless you. We'll see you right then, right here, 6 p.m. And we continue to have these questions, and we have another one next Monday as well.
See you soon, Kingsley.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.